Hopefully you just watched my lesson on functional components. In this bonus video, I asked Evan Yu about the power of functional components and how he thinks they should be used.
In Vue's context, functional components, the primary cost save comes with like one less Vue component instance. Right? Functional components don't have an instance. Creating a Vue instance is expensive when you compare it to, say, the cost of rendering one extra virtual node. The best use case for functional components is in leaf components. And by leaf components, I mean, for example, you have a list, a very long list, 100 items. Each item contains like 3 buttons, right? If you turn all of these buttons into functional components, you will definitely see considerable performance improvements because you're essentially saving 300 Vue component instances from your app. So that's less JavaScript to execute, that's less memory usage, less bookkeeping. So functional components essentially have 2 major use cases. One is these cheap leaf components that you can reuse but don't come with the cost of a full stateful component. And another is one that we see here, the functional wrapper components that perform some logic. It simply proxies itself to other components. It's doing logic, but you don't want to pay the full component cost just to do some JavaScript logic. So it's kind of like an embeddable snippet of JavaScript for your templates.
Nice.
Yeah. It's also a form of code reuse. If you think about it, the router view is actually a functional wrapper component. So if you look into the Vue router source code, you'll find that the router view is a functional component, and all it does is take the current route and take your router configuration and figure out which component it should render in itself, and then render in that component.
Right? Oh, wow.
So
makes sense.
Yeah. That's the idea.
I know my mind was a little blown when I realized that router view is a functional wrapper component, but it makes complete sense now, as it's its job to delegate to the proper component based on my route. In the next video, we'll dive back into the Vue source code to figure out how the mounting process works.